again soon. Let's talk about it all. Helima Croft, the global head of commodity strategy at RBC Capital Markets. Helima, thanks for popping on kind of late notice. Looking at supply and demand, is it even possible for Europe to completely get off Russian energy?
Well, first of all, welcome back from Gas Tech. I think the big question is, in what time period? I mean, European officials have talked about wanting to get off of Russian gas. And if you look at the US EU trade deal that was just signed, it includes massive purchases potentially of US molecules, natural gas, LNG into Europe. So it's really a question of like time scale. I do think the interesting question, though, is when we talk about potentially like larger secondary tariffs on countries that continue to import Russian molecules, there's kind of an easier way. If you really wanted to get countries off of importing Russian oil and gas, you could put secondary sanctions on Russian energy companies. And to date, there have been no secondary sanctions on Gazprom, on Rosneft, on none of the big energy producers, and we continue to see the molecules flowing.
Is that because we're trying to kind of, I don't want to say protect Europe, but they do need that gas, I think. I mean, you don't want to completely destroy the economies of Europe when they've already done a lot of self-inflicted damage.
And 100%, because also Europe went forward, early on with the move to ban imports of Russian seaborne oil. And if you actually look at what Russia gets the most money from, Brian, they get the lion's share of their money from oil exports, not natural gas exports. So actually, the decision to go after the oil imports was a big decision that the Europeans made. And notably, it was the United States that was very concerned at the time about a major supply disruption. So we did price caps to enable those barrels that were no longer welcome in Europe to flow to countries like India. Now, they were supposed to be at a discount if you used European service providers. But again, when we talk about why India continues to import so much oil from Russia, that was a function of the price cap policy.
Yeah, there's been also talk about raising sanctions on Iranian oil vis-a-vis sanctioning the countries like India and China that buy that oil. Is that even possible, Helima?
Well, India, I think why we focus so much on India and why the Trump administration focused so much on India is we did see when you applied sanctions pressure on Iran, when you basically did secondary sanctions on Iran, you did see India essentially really significantly curb their purchases of Iranian oil. Where is Iranian oil going now? It is going largely to Chinese teapot refineries that are disconnected from global financial markets. Now, some of the Iranian oil also gets disguised as other countries' barrels. So people point to a country like Malaysia and say it's really interesting if you look at large Malaysian oil exports when Malaysia is not a very large oil producer. So there's a lot, I think, that can still be done in terms of sanctions enforcement when it comes to Iran. And that's always the question. You could have sanctions on the books, but what is the degree of enforcement? But if you were to impose, again, secondary sanctions on some of these big Russian oil corporates and gas corporates, you would, I think, see refiners like Reliance in India starting to significantly pare back their purchases.
Yeah, but like you're a mom, right? There's times when you say to your kid, well, if you do that again, you're going to be in big trouble. Then they do it again. And then you say, well, if you do that again, you're going to be in big trouble. Because at some point, you have to enforce the policies. And I wonder, is the White House, is Brussels, are they going to actually start enforcing them? Because it's one thing to say something. It's another thing to do something.
Well, again, if you look at seaborne oil imports into Europe, like they did cut those off. Again, the question was, were we too concerned at the time, Brian? Remember the time when Europe went forward and frankly, it was the Treasury that was worried about a 3 million barrel a day disruption and higher energy costs at home. Did we make a decision that we were more concerned about inflation than driving down Russian oil revenue? I always say that price caps were an inflation reduction measure, not really aimed at reducing Russian revenue.